right. Welcome, everyone. We're just getting our stream set up, so excuse all of the quietness on our end. Looks like we're getting some folks tuning in. Thank you for joining us. Facts Only Friday, this Friday, March 5th. This might even be around the time we started this series, Justin. What do you think? This was right around COVID-19. We started this Facts Only Friday series, and I don't know, why was that? What was our reasoning there?
Lots going on in the cattle industry at that time too.
So much going on. And we really just wanted a way to talk to all of our followers, our members, our supporters directly. You know, this is one of the most non-scripted, non-edited formats that we can come to you as. You know, we're doing the monthly Horn Wrap calls. That's the second Tuesday of each month. But these were just created kind of as a supplement to that. You know, you can jump on the phone or you can jump on Facebook or YouTube and talk to us live. Maybe it doesn't take up as much capacity on your end as a phone call. And then plus it's recorded so you can see it later. But this is in full transparency mode. USCA is all about connecting kind of directly to our membership and trying to facilitate those conversations as best as we can. And we just had one of those conversations on Monday, right, Justin? We had the USCA Marketing Committee met.
We did. We had a great bunch on for our marketing call. Brett made her over. How you doing, Brett?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Just a second. We'll get this figured out here.
Welcome, Brett. Yeah, no worries, no rush. I think you've got maybe beef as your background.
Yeah. Don't tell my wife. There we go.
Well, Brett, we are live and we've got about 16 folks on. Welcome to the Zoom room, I guess we should say.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Do I look funny? Do I look funny to everybody else, or is it just me?
Is that a trick question?
No, it looks kind of like spotty or grainy or something.
It
Yes.
looks like you might have a virtual background on, like in your video, maybe.
Okay, let me look. I know I was supposed to get on early and figure all this out. There we go. How's that?
That's perfect.
All right.
No, this was great. This was great. We always like to leave a few minutes to let folks get on. I know most of you are joining us because you got that little notification, or maybe you just got our text message. Either way, welcome. This is USCA's Facts Only Friday. Today we're talking about the Cattle Market Transparency Act of 2021. This was just introduced this week by Senators Deb Fischer, Ron Wyden. It was introduced in the 116th Congress, or last year, but unfortunately with the new Congress, all the bills from the previous Congress get wiped clean and we start over brand new. So Senator Fischer had to reintroduce her bill with some minor modifications, which our economist here, Brett Crosby, helped with. And yeah, we're very proud to have both USCA's Vice President Justin Tupper on, tuning in from St. Ange, South Dakota. They did have a sale today, so he's wrapping that up at the barn. And we've got Brett Crosby. You might know him as NBA Cowboy on Twitter. Brett's an esteemed livestock economist, and he's here to talk to us about how all the numbers add up on the bill. All right, we've got more folks now tuning in. We've got Butch Gillespie. We have somebody whose name on Facebook is just Redneck. Redneck, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Butch Gillespie, Whitney Klasna, tune in. Let us know where you're dialing in from. We'd love to see it. But I guess I think we're ready to get into it here. It's about 5 past the hour. So Vice President Tupper, let's talk a little bit about some of the work leading up to the introduction of this bill. Like we just mentioned, USCA's Marketing Committee hosted a call this Monday, but we've been working on this far before that, regular meetings last year, this year. And so let's just provide a little bit of context for folks on the work that's been put into this bill behind the scenes.
Absolutely, Leah. I'm glad everybody can tune in. U.S. cattlemen, this has been an issue we've been working on for a very long time. And this particular issue about a bill dates clear back to the winter thaw we had in Billings a winter ago when we sat down with several of us were there at the meeting and just had simply grassroots ideas about what we could do to help out this cattle market. And we see some real dangers in the direction it's been going and the captive supply that the big four packers have been able to get a hold of. And so it dates way back to then. Then as COVID started, we started meeting regularly. We were having plant closures and again, more need for some of this transparency to be out there. And we got some cattle backed up. And as we went through the whole summer months, we met and had lengthy discussions. We talked about 5014 to start with. We had a lot of people from the South, a lot of great people on a lot of calls, and had compromised at 3014. And we had went back and forth, and some of these groups had already had mandates of up to 50%. We had some other people on our calls that were worried that that was too much. And then as it evolved here, Senator Fisher's staff did a great job and looked at some of the complex problems, and we've come up with another really viable solution. Not saying that 5014 isn't a viable solution. This is just another one that we think has great legs and really attacks some very complex parts of the issue.
Muted, sorry. Just was saying thank you for that, everyone. And if you see me kind of looking down at my keyboard here, I'm replying to your comments in real time. So drop your comments, drop your questions, drop your, random facts and statements. We'll get to it here. Really good context there for how we got to where we are today on the bill. And so I just wanted to provide a bit of an overview of the bill in both the House and the Senate. Kind of including some of the co-sponsors that are named and where the bill kind of goes from here. So like I said, the Cattle Market Transparency Act 2021 introduced this week on Tuesday by both Senators Deb Fischer of Nebraska and Ron Wyden, a Democrat from Oregon. Joining them was Mike Braun from Indiana and Cindy Hyde-Smith from Mississippi. Now, we're already in communication with many other Senate offices to hope to get them to co-sponsor the bill as well. We're receiving some really good feedback on that. There's just a few more stages of approval these offices have to go through before they can join as a co-sponsor, but some really great feedback in terms of this being a very dynamic bill for a very dynamic industry. Of course, forgot to mention in the House, Vicky Hartzler from Missouri introduced a companion bill in the House. So we're already starting off on two really solid bills, two good footholds there in Congress. And where does it go from here? I know we get this question a lot, is it just a bill that's going to move through and get a vote per Schoolhouse Rock? Probably not. We have this year something called the Livestock Mandatory Reporting Program that's up for reauthorization. And if that's a new word for you, then go and check out our previous Facts Only Friday. We've talked about the livestock mandatory price reporting before. It's a very important program, but it's reauthorized every 5 years, and it was due for a reauthorization last year, but we pushed it into this year, into the end of this fiscal year, September 30th, 2021. And we did that because we wanted a little bit more time to work out some of these needed changes and needed reform. And the industry just wasn't quite ready to make those changes. So we pushed the expiration date to the end of this fiscal year, and we will be pushing to get provisions within the Senator Fisher bill included within the livestock mandatory reporting reauthorization. So when they go to open that program up and look at it for any needed changes, they're going to lay it out on the Senate and House Agriculture Committee tables there, and they're going to say, okay, what needs to be changed, what needs to be added in, what needs to be taken out, and USCA will be at that table to let folks know that this bill needs to be included in livestock mandatory reporting reauthorization. So I know we mentioned last year we have a short window. We've got another short window in this Congress to make some real changes. And so that's why it's very important that we're here communicating with you and that our members, our supporters are as well versed on this bill as Brett Crosby is here today, because we need more advocates out there in the countryside for this bill. We need folks dialing their Congress people and letting them know that this is really important, because when it moves, it's going to move really fast. So let's dive into what the bill actually is. And we've got 4 main points here. And I'm going to jump over to Brett now to walk us through that first point. Brett, what's that first thing that this bill does?
Okay, the first thing the bill does is establish a regional mandatory minimum threshold of negotiated cash. And that's a mouthful. Obviously, it was a mouthful for me because I stuttered over it. But what we want to do is find out what cattle are worth. That's called price discovery. And in order to do that, we need to have a large enough statistical sample, or a large enough sample size of cash trades to be statistically reliable, to let us know what cattle are worth. And we need to have that in every region. And right now, because formula contracts have formula and grid contracts have become so common, there is not enough negotiated cash trade in some regions, particularly Colorado and Texas, to give us a true picture of what cash is worth. So the first thing this bill does is establish a mandatory minimum number of animals and number of transactions that will be required between packers and feedlots in each region to help us in the price discovery process. And it's important to note that this mandatory minimum is going to be based on sound statistical methodology, and the USDA is in charge of determining what those minimums are, but importantly, their methodology for determining those minimums is subject to is published, and it's going to be subject to public comment. So that gives the industry time to have economists look at this, look at the methodology, and agree, or if they disagree, explain why, and work with the USDA to make sure that we have a very good sample size in each region to help us know what cattle are worth, or to facilitate price discovery.
And Brett's being modest. He was the one who suggested that we include requiring that the Secretary of Agriculture consult with the chief economist and the industry to help establish those regional mandatory minimum thresholds. And I know this is one of the most popular parts of the bill, so we're going to talk about it later on. We're going to talk about it more later on in this Facts Only Friday. But if you've got any questions on that part, drop it in the comments now. Justin, talk to us about this publicly available library of marketing contracts. What does that mean? What's the second point we've got here?
A couple things. I'm going to back up a little bit to what Brett said, and I think one of the things that's huge is right now the packer controls obviously all the shackle space there is, and the reason that we have trouble with some of this establishing what the market is because of what Brett said, all of the grid trade and whatnot, and it's almost always based off the 5-state weighted average. Well, if the packer can control what that 5-state weighted average is by the amount of cattle that they have bought up, or they can suppress the price in certain areas because they don't have to buy a lot of cash cattle, and make that number lower, and then they can give $1 or $2 up to their buddies that give all their cattle to them in certain feedlots, or they know that all of them go to one of those packing houses, then they can make them feel good that they're getting a $2 or $3 up when actually they've suppressed the market that far. So in kind of a more cowboy terms. Brett does a great job with the numbers. That's what's going on in the countryside, and they lull us into making us feel like it's our treat that they gave us a $2 up. Or I know, for example, they were going around, and Brett and I have talked about this. For the first week in May, they knew they were going to be short, so they were offering $4 or $5 over the board if you would contract to them ahead of that time. So those are some of the reasons that they do that kind of thing. And we really believe this regional mandate can start to help that out. Now, back to the question, Leah, you asked me about maintaining a library. Well, in all other meat industries, there's a library that gives you a guide of how those grids and how those formulas will be. And it isn't all over the place, and there isn't 5 different ways to do that. So this will give us a constant and be able to have a continual record and not having to compare against 4 or 5 different grids that are actually slightly different in ways. This library will be maintained, and it'll be able to hold confidentiality, but yet publish those prices. So I think that's also an integral part of the bill.
I think so too. And like you said, other livestock industries already have this. So livestock's actually behind on this point, and it is one of those critical parts of the bill. Brett, this next one might be a little bit harder. Again, if you haven't heard of the Livestock Mandatory Reporting Program, this next part might be a little bit more difficult to wrap your head around. I know when I was learning about it, it does get into the weeds quickly. So Brett, could you break down for us this third point on the bill, which is mandating that a packer report to USDA the number of cattle scheduled to be delivered for slaughter each day for the next 14 days, and then requiring USDA to report that information? What effect does that have on the market, or what's going on there?
Well, when we know what the packers' needs are, it gives us a better idea of what we're whether we want to put our cattle on the show list or not. In short, if for example, in my area, I know I have a choice between Cargill or JBS. Those are the only 2 really close packers to where I have my cattle fed. But when I know when the Cargill and JBS are going to need cattle, and when they maybe don't need so many cattle, that gives me an idea before I am ready. I need to decide to put them on the show list, whether I want to actually put them up for bid or not. And it also, it's important. There is another 14-day part of this that requires that negotiated cash be delivered within 14 days, which means that packers can't negotiate cash for the next 30 days and then have a captive supply for 30 days. Those cattle have to be delivered. But this is all about transparency. And talking with an economist with one of the big 4, he said, this can be a little bit dangerous, because if we were going to, if the big four got together and shared what their needs were going to be for the next 14 days, we'd go to jail. And that's true. But the difference is that's just the buyer side. Now, if the sellers know just as much as the buyers know about what the meat demand is going to be, we have a better idea of whether we want to market our cattle this week, whether we want to put them on the show list this week, or whether we want to try and wait for another 2 weeks and see if we want to market them a little bit later or earlier. That's the effect that the 14-day schedule report is going to have on on the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. More information is always a good thing. You've got to have that information out there to help marketing decisions. I know all of our boss, I guess, Jess Peterson always says, markets operate best with informed and active participants. And that's what
Right.
one of these, I guess that's what this entire bill does, is open that information up. And that's even more important in this fourth bullet point. And Vice President Tupper, you attended several meetings on livestock mandatory reporting, and I think it was 2017. We had all of the livestock industry in a room talking about needed changes. And one of the things that kept coming up is that we can't change the program unless we address confidentiality guidelines. And this fourth bullet point in the bill addresses confidentiality. So why don't we expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think when I was in DC for those meetings, confidentiality was maybe the dirty language I was really tired of hearing about. And what it's supposed to mean is that we're not able to decipher who's doing what in a certain region or giving a certain price because they're disclosing that information, which really is a bunch of crap, to be totally honest, in the cattle industry. Because if Tyson or Cargill or anybody today puts out a bid of 114, for example, on a Wednesday or Thursday, the whole feeding industry knows within an hour or less, probably within minutes, of what those bids are and who's bidding them. So they use that as a marker that and we were told this was put in there. It's pulled in from other industries, and they have to use this confidentiality. Well, this bill would prohibit USDA from using confidentiality as justification for not reporting, and making clear that the USDA must report all LMR information. And I think that is really huge because, again, industry already knows what those are, but they're using confidentiality for several things. One, to hide some of those $2 ups that they're giving to their favorite feedlots that are sending them all the cattle, which does not get into the weighted average. And it also lets them hide behind some of those numbers. And we may not know. They may be Holstein cross cattle. They may be, we don't know what some of those are. Maybe they're way overfed cattle. There's a lot of factors. And then it all gets put into that 5-state weighted average. And then we come up with a number, and they're able to manipulate that number because of livestock mandatory price reporting right at the moment. I think that part is huge. I also think another big part is the packer margins, and this is not confidential. We know that within the last year, during the middle of the craziest pandemic that I can't believe everybody within the industry has ever seen, packer margins are as good or better than they've ever been. And that's something that we really need to look at. I mean, if you take this a 5-year, and Brett can divulge into this, I'm getting a little off topic on Leah, but their margins are better than they ever have been through what should be some of the tougher times they've ever had. We've had all of food service shut down for almost a year, and their packer margins are unbelievable and staying unbelievable. Well, the feeding side of things are taking losses right and left. So off on my little tangent there, but again, I think confidentiality is something we had to be addressed. I really compliment Senator Fisher and her staff as making that a part of this, because confidentiality is not being used for what it was supposed to. It's being used as a mask and a mirror to manipulate the prices this time. So I compliment Senator Fisher's staff and everybody who worked on this to get that as part of it.
Absolutely. And Senator Fisher and her team, complete workhorses. They've been in consultation with industry. They've been in consultation with the USDA. They've talked to just about everybody to build this bill up into what it is. And Justin, there is no off topic today. I feel like we could spend hours on this issue and not really truly begin to unravel it. So for those of you joining, welcome. You're going to have to spend a few more hours on the subject before you understand truly the crux of the issue. And from my perspective, I think this confidentiality issue is really the true problem here. And Brett does a much better job of explaining why that is. Brett, you mentioned when we first began this, if we could just address confidentiality, we wouldn't even need any of this legislation. We wouldn't need 5014. We wouldn't need the Senator Fisher bill. Why is that? What is the confidentiality guidelines that are holding us back?
Well, in short, the confidentiality guidelines are designed to to keep from disclosing individuals, and we see that in the census of ag all the time. You know, that there are some operations in some regions that that aren't reported because everybody would know who they were. You know, if there's one dairy in northern Wyoming, you know, they're not going to report Park County, Wyoming dairies and dairy numbers because everyone would know who it is. And so that's the purpose of confidentiality is to avoid disclosing personal information. But it the effect of confidentiality when it comes to mandatory price reporting has been to um, to hold back a lot of transactions from being reported because there in some regions some players, some feedlots and some packers have a monopoly in those regions, and so as a result we get no information. um, if we didn't have the confidentiality protection that results from them building a monopoly in those regions, we would have all the information that we are looking for price discovery. And I think we need to be clear that what we're looking for is information. We're not trying to force the packer to pay more necessarily. You know, that comes in, that's a different topic, and that comes with negotiation. What we are looking for is enough information to make informed decisions and to be able to negotiate on a level playing field so that we have true market competition. And that's what we're looking for first. Then if it looks like there are some monopolistic practices that are taking place, we can use the information that we get from this bill to address those things. But this bill is about transparency, and it's about price discovery. Um, and I have to say that if I was one of the big four packers, the incentives are in place for me to do just exactly what they're doing. You know, they were caught short bought when cattle were in short supply in 2013, 2014. So they offered incentives for people to trade cattle on a formula, and they offer incentives to the large corporate feeders who are big customers of theirs. And you know, every business offers preferred customer incentives. We just want to know what those are, and understand what cattle are really worth. The packers are responding to market incentives, and as a result, as an unfortunate result of that, we have lost a lot of the information we need to really be able to negotiate our prices with the packers.
It's the information age. Again, it's all about getting that market information. That's what this bill does. That's what we're aiming for here, is just getting as much information from the marketplace. It's already being reported. It's already out there. It's just there's a hold on it, and there's some underlying very technical things we've got to work out before that information can get to you when you're making your marketing decisions. I just put it in the chat, but I want to remind folks who are watching, it's almost time for the question and answer portion. We're here to answer your most asked questions. I know all of us have gotten into several heated social media discussions this week, And I invited all of those folks on this call here tonight. So I hope you're watching and we're ready for those questions when you get a chance. So drop them in the comment box, but I've got some questions of my own here for Justin and Brett that we'll go over first, but hopefully it'll help spark discussion and we can get some questions in the comment box. First off, this seems to be the burning question, and Justin, you alluded to it earlier. Why not 50-14? What's USCA's stance on 50-14? Where is that? Where did that go?
You know, our stance 100% on 50-14 is we were originally ones that worked on that. And I think if Senator Grassley reintroduces, we don't know exactly where that is. We would still be, even though we throw support to Senator Fisher's bill, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't support 50-14 or some form of that also. So I just think that right now, this is a bill that gives us all the things that we need to move forward. One of the things that we haven't talked about, Leah, is that it right in the provisions of the bill, it allows for re-looking within 2 years. It mandates that industry will re-look at this in 2 years. Any parts that are not working will be fixed, and they have to bring industry in to do that. That's also a big part of this bill, which also means we could do it within a year. If something's not working the way we believe it should, we could ask for it to be revisited sooner. And I think that is a crucial part of this bill. When we talk about how complex this cattle industry and this cattle issue is, we need to be able to move with the industry. And, the packer is going to, if this goes through, they're going to make some moves. Brett's exactly right. They're in business to make money, and we need them to make money. They're an integral part of our what we do as cattle producers. But we also need to be able to move with it. And I love the flexibility that Senator Fisher's bill gives us to be able to revisit these issues and get the facts from economists like Brett that have the history, and then we can revisit and make good changes. So I think that's a big part of this bill also.
And I want to hear from Brett on that too. I'm not going to let Brett get off easy on this one. Why not 50-14? Where is that at? Why not?
Well, the short answer is this bill has a lot better chance of passing, and the longer answer is that this bill does some things that 50-14 doesn't. First of all, it offers us a contract library. Second, it eliminates the USDA's ability to hold back information because of confidentiality. Third, and probably the most important, is it requires that the mandatory minimum be based on econometrics and statistics that so 50% doesn't just look like a number that has been drawn out of the hat. It represents a statistically significant sample. And finally, actually, this is the most important, and Justin alluded to it, but legislation almost always unintended unintended consequences, and our ability to look at this every year as the mandatory minimums are reestablished and recalculated, and then do a cost benefit analysis in 5 years, 5 years from the time the bill passes, gives us the opportunity to address those unintended consequences that we just didn't anticipate. And while we've tried to look for, look at all the incentives that all the players will have and that are created through this bill, there's no doubt that we're missing something. And we want the flexibility of being able to revisit this.
Exactly. No, legislation's perfect, and can't stress this enough. Read the bill. Read the bill. Read the bill. It's linked right there on the comment page. It's only 16 pages. You know, they started last night reading 628 pages of the American Rescue Act or plan, or however they're calling it. 628 pages. 3 people took turns all through the night to read that. This bill's only 16. Shouldn't take you more than a couple minutes, an hour.
They should have hired auctioneers for that deal in Congress. We could have got through it quicker.
My goodness, I couldn't even imagine three poor people reading all those pages. But read the bill. Don't believe our interpretation of it. Don't believe anybody's interpretation of it. Once you read the bill, you're going to see what Justin's talking about. You're going to see what Brett's talking about. It's in there. It's a dynamic bill. You have a very dynamic industry. It's much more technical than the 5014 bill, and it offers a roadmap right in there, right in the bill. I want to read one thing in here that's just so incredible from my perspective. I've got to find it, of course, because I just lost it. In the bill, there's a sense of the Senate. There's a sense of the Senate saying, it is the sense of the Senate that all participants in the fed cattle market have a responsibility to contribute to regionally sufficient levels of negotiated trade of fed cattle in all cattle feeding regions in order to achieve robust price discovery. That's incredible. That's saying it is the sense of the Senate, of all 100 members, that there needs to be more negotiated trade within the cattle market. That's in the bill. It, like Justin said, what else is in there? We've got reviews included every 2 years in the bill. I can't stress enough. It's 16 pages. It's a lovely PDF. Go through it and see for yourself exactly what's in there. And if you come across something that maybe doesn't jive with you, we are open to feedback. You know, just this Monday on our marketing committee call, we had some feedback, and we went in and we made changes to the bill before it was introduced. We can make changes again once we get to that livestock mandatory reporting reauthorization period. So, you know, like Brett said, it's not perfect. There's going to be unintended consequences, but we're trying to mitigate that as much as possible. And we need your help to go in there and make those changes. Justin, you touched on it earlier. I think both of you guys did when you said this bill has more of an opportunity to pass. What does that mean? Who else is in support of this bill out there?
So, Leah, this is way more your realm than ours, but I'm going to talk to my time of being on U.S. Cattlemen and going to Washington and working on bills. And I wish all of industry could understand that how close we are to making a change that we have not been able to do for years and years and years. And again, not any bill is perfect, but I wish that we could get the cattle industry itself, when you look at it as a whole, is so small. And if our industry groups can't, and we never seem to be able to 100% agree on any of these issues, but there is so much in this bill that is undisputably great for all of the cattle industry, especially all the way from the cow-calf guy to the feedlot guy, all the way through. There are many things within this bill that is great for all them. And I don't think myself or a lot of the other groups can cusp how close we are to making something happen. This has had more publicity and more talk on transparency, 5014, 3014, the cattle market bill, all of it. We've had more good press on this than we've had on anything. And we are on the cusp. I hope if nobody takes anything else away, I want people to understand we're on the cusp of making a change that can have a real effect on our bottom lines. And we've got to get together and do this together, and we've got to push it forward. And I think when you talk about bipartisan support today in Congress, that's unheard of. Name one other thing that is bipartisan going on in Congress today, and we have bipartisan support. I can't again give enough credit to the people that worked on this bill. Brett, we've spent hours and hours on Mark Hall, Senator Fisher's staff, Leah, our people at U.S. Cattlemen, Leah, Jess, and Kelly, all of you guys. It's been great. And we are on the verge of making something very historic happen. And all of you on this call can help us get that done. Call your Congress people, tell them to get behind Senator Fisher's bill in the House. I forget that gal's name. The same thing, make sure they're supporting it there. Leah will help us out. But in layman's terms, that's how I believe it. You know, I've been at this for 15 years or so with U.S. Cattlemen, and this is the closest and best we've been. We had cool and there was some really good things happening at that time, but the WTO shot us down. we're in a place now where we're writing legislation that's going to make real change, and I'm very excited about it.
And it's not up to Congress. Like Justin said, we've got the bipartisanship. It's going to be up to the countryside. It's going to be up to folks on this call right here. Are we going to support it? Or are we going to let it fail? Like we saw, you know, with country of origin labeling, we had an all or nothing approach by some groups in the countryside, and we ended up with nothing because we couldn't find the compromise. We couldn't find the solution. This is that compromise. This is that solution. Brett, did you want to touch on anything? I do want to talk about some of the groups that have supported, unless you want to jump in and kind of where.
Well, the only thing I have to say is this is an opportunity that this is a bill that the entire industry can get behind, and you know, I believe that the NCBA is important, and it certainly benefits the cattle industry. They have a lot of power and a lot of voice in Washington. But they represent the entire beef industry, which includes the packers and the large corporate feeders. And you know, it's not just the packers that are going to oppose this. The large corporates are going to oppose this too, because they're going to have to, you know, the preferred customer premium they get is going to be out there for everyone to see. But that's so the NCBA is in a very, very difficult spot. You know, that this is a very hotly contested issue within their organization. U.S. Cattlemen represents cattle producers. While we care about the beef industry as a whole, our primary focus is what's best for cattle producers. And so we can work with the NCBA on this, and I've reached out to several members of the NCBA to get their thoughts and input, and I would like us to work together. This bill, as Ethan Lane says, it targets all of the things that the NCBA has targeted all along, and well, since last summer's meeting, and so now let's get together, let's work together, let's make the industry better, let's make information more readily accessible, and let's make things more transparent so that we can have an active and competitive marketplace.
Couldn't agree more. And I just linked an article in the comments section on the split within NCBA on this bill. Last year, 17 state affiliates sent a letter supporting Senator Fisher's bill, and you can see which 17 are there. And the other, I'm not sure how many other affiliates there are, but the other did not support it. And you saw that it happened at their annual meeting last year. So they're in a tough spot, but we've got 17 of their state affiliates supporting the bill. American Farm Bureau Federation supports the bill. We're hearing that the Livestock Marketing Association is discussing it this week and is leaning towards supporting it. I'm not going to make any promises. The one group that does not support the bill is RCAF. They've come out and vehemently opposing it. So you've got NCBA groups, you've got American Farm Bureau, you've got USCA supporting it and pushing this bill forward, and you've got RCAF opposing it. So that's where the industry stands right now. We've got a question in the comments, so I want to get to it because, wow, we are already almost at the end of this. And so Jacob Hofschneider, I hope I said your last name right. Jacob from Nebraska, he asks, will the USDA maintain confidentiality of both seller and purchaser in the Library of Marketing contracts? That's one question. So we'll answer that one, then we'll get to a second one. So will USDA maintain confidentiality of both seller and purchaser in the Library of Marketing contracts?
I'll try it. Go ahead, Brett. You try it first.
Go ahead. Okay. According to the language in the contract, library confidentiality must still be maintained. In other words, they won't name names. And that's, I mean, you know, there are few enough players in some of the regions that people can figure things out, probably, but not Nebraska. And there will be no names associated with the contracts, and if necessary, the regions can be redistricted to help maintain individuals' confidentiality.
Justin, did you want to add on to that?
I would just say, again, it goes back to a comment I made earlier. Confidentiality has become something they want to hide behind, and we know there are some laws in place, but you got to bring it to the real side. When it doesn't matter which one of the big four is bidding 114, my phone blows up, and I don't feed that many cattle. I know within 15 minutes of when one of those big packers has made a bid of 113 or 114. So confidentiality about their side of the coin is pretty tough to swallow. And this addresses some of it. Brett and I, we could talk about confidentiality for another 10 hours about how we disagree with how it should be, but it addresses it and it gets it in a manner so we at least get the information out there, just what Brett said. And I think it's a big plus. I don't know that it's enough. We may need to push harder. That may be one of the things that we have to look at within a year or two, that they still are using confidentiality against us, then we have to make some changes. But in a long story short, I think this starts to address that question, and we can maybe move forward and really make some change with it.
All right, well, there you go, Jacob. And that was one of a two-part question. Jacob's second question was, how will the library address verbal contracts and formulas?
Well, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
There's
no language in the bill that addresses verbal contracts or agreements.
And when the cattle are reported, when they're turned in, however they are right now, all that information is there in mandatory price reporting. Some of it we just don't get to see because of different factors. So verbal contracts or whatever, once they're turned in and they go to the kill floor, that is already in mandatory price reporting. It's just we don't get to see it all.
All right, this is another call for questions. Brett, I know you and I have been on Twitter fingers this week responding, and I'm kind of disappointed that we don't have these naysayers on the call here today to go back and forth with. I hope they listen to this video afterwards and they get all their questions answered that they've been asking us. So I'm just gonna go into some of those comments from social media so we can chat about them. Unless anybody who's tuning in has any questions, drop them in the comment box. We'll get to you, but unless we hear from you, we're just gonna keep going here with our own commentary. So let's see. I think one of the other things that one of the more common themes I heard this week was, we already have rules on the books that aren't being enforced. Why do we need more government regulations? Why do we need more interference? Do we want to expand on that?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. If it's government regulation that caused this problem. If we didn't have confidentiality protection, then we would have the LMR information that we need for price discovery, and so if as I have said on the call, if packers and the big corporate feedlots want to show us their underwear, then we can do away with this. We just need to know what cattle are worth. We just need information, so that enough information to make good decisions. And it's, as I've said before, it's not just packers that have an oligopoly. There are some very, very large feedlots. It depends on who you talk with, but the estimates range anywhere from 25 to 35% of the cattle killed in the U.S. are fed by less than 10 different feedlot companies, and so they get preferred customer incentives, and so if we were able to take LMR confidentiality away, we wouldn't have this problem. But then what they would have to do is rely on something else other than the free information that LMR forces the negotiated cash sellers to give them, which means that they would actually have to buy those data, and that that's the free market way to do it. And if they want to go that direction, then I guess they're welcome to do it. But absent that, this is the only avenue that we have. And as the NCBA agreed last summer, if the trade doesn't meet the mandatory minimums, then they have to seek a legislative solution. And I don't like new legislation any more than anybody else, but regulation caused to this, and so now we have to go and fix it.
Justin, did you want to add on to that? Why? I mean, we already have rules on the books. What's one more going to do?
Yeah, I'd be the last one to want more regulation, but there is no other way. When you have all the shackle space, 80% of the shackle space controlled by 4 companies that know exactly when and how many cattle they're going to have, that just takes away from how we're going to get a good price for our product. And they're never going to go out looking for more when they have 80% or so of their kills already spoken for. And we want to make sure that we can tip some of that leverage back. And obviously there's going to be huge pushback from the packers, the big feedlots. And this is not going to be an easy thing to do, because they're going to be working the back channels, doing everything they can. And that's why everybody on this Zoom meeting and everywhere else has got to call their Congress people. They've got to get involved. And I think that's another thing that's happened within the cattle industry is we haven't gotten involved. And when we did get involved, then we get torn between 2 or 3 of these groups, whether it be NCBA, RCAF, US Cattlemen. I don't want to hear any of it. I want to hear that we unify behind this bill because it has great things for the cattle industry and we get it done. And that's where we got to really, really work towards. And we got to put our petty stuff with any of the industry groups, just like Brett alluded to earlier. We've got to make sure we get this done. And when we get this done, it's like climbing the ladder. We take another step up the ladder and we just keep moving. And that's the only way that we're going to move this industry forward. If we sit back and we let ourselves tear apart and decide that we don't like this or that, or that somebody's got a better idea, we're going to fall down and we're just not big enough. And we're in a place in history where we can't afford that. So this is a call to action. And again, I think it is historic, the place we're in. And I hope everybody can understand that. And it's just a plea in my heart to call your Congress people, get behind the bill. Let's get this passed, and then let's see what we can do from there. Because I think the sky's the limit. If we can unify and get this done, who knows where we can go from here. I think we can just continue to conquer problems. And it's been great so far. There's been a lot of unity, but we've also got to make sure that we rally the troops and we get it done.
Absolutely. We've got 2 more questions that came in, so I want to make sure we get to them. Our favorite Johnny K from South Dakota. Does enforcement fall to USDA or DOJ?
Enforcement on the LMR parts, I guess it would be the USDA would fall, Brett. I guess that's how I would say it on the on how they would, the minimums and how they would be reported. That'd be within the USDA, which maybe would go to the DOJ if they're not following something that's required. I'd throw it to you, Brett, for further on that.
The bill doesn't specify how who is responsible for enforcement, but the way things are typically enforced is through the USDA until there is there's evidence that the rules aren't being followed, because there is what we'd call it illegal intent. In other words, price fixing intent, and then the DOJ would get involved.
Great answer.
But I'm not an attorney. I didn't even sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I don't know.
I don't know. Oh my goodness. Well, I would say it's probably going to be USDA that enforces it, just because it is the livestock mandatory reporting program, and so they're in charge of it. But Johnny, we will look into that and get back to you. We had one more question or comment. Speaking of industry unity, Karina Jones. And Karina, I had pulled up your comment on one of my posts and was going to read it. So thanks for joining. Karina, I believe, is field rep for RCAF. So great to have RCAF here. And any time that RCAF would like to discuss this in a public setting, we would be very glad to have our Vice President Tupper here, or our President Brooke Miller, have that conversation, because we're here and ready to collaborate with any other organizations that are here and ready to collaborate. And Karina, you mentioned this on a couple of my social media posts this week too, but she says, she waiting for the USDA to study this is going to take 2, 3, maybe 10 calf cycles. Independent cattle feeders will be dust in the wind waiting around for the USDA to study and implement. And I think immediately what I would say to that is, this isn't a study, but I'm going to push it to you all. I've heard this before too. We can't wait. We can't wait. We need something now. We need something to happen now and fast. And 5014 is going to do that. So what is the timeline with the Cattle Market Transparency Act?
The timeline is 2 years. There has to be an established mandatory minimum within 2 years, and then it will run for 3 years, and then it will be reviewed at the end of those 3 years. So 5 years from now, that's 2 cattle cycles. If we're so close to the edge that we can't hold out for 2 cattle cycles, I don't know that 5014 is going to save us anyway, frankly. And again, this we can't change the market. We can't change market forces. And one of the things that's driving market forces right now is chain space, hook space. We need more packing capacity and more packing competition than we currently have. And until we get more competition within the packing sector, we're going to have these huge margins. But this at least gives us information that we can use to negotiate and get a more accurate price for our cattle.
I think exactly that. I think we do need action now. I don't disagree one bit. We would love to have action now. There isn't an action item out there, as Brett alluded to, that we can get right now. I would love it too. There isn't such thing. This gives us the roadmap. This gets us there. And in the meantime, this isn't the only thing we're going to work on. If we can get this bill passed, there's many things that we can continue to do to enhance the cattle market. One of them is he talked about shackle space. U.S. Cattlemen, we have a great industry group and working group, I should say, not industry, industry group within industry working on trying to get more packing house space. We have a great group of people working on that. And there's many things we can do. So to answer the question, I agree. Now is better. I would love now. There isn't a now answer. And so without a now answer, we've got to work on what we can. And this addresses a lot of those issues as we move forward. And I think if we can get this passed, then we can work on some more things that would maybe happen a little faster and maybe change the industry a little sooner. But this definitely addresses it and puts down a roadmap that gets us there. So it's not that we don't want to hear about the now, because we know it's tough right now. I've sold cattle. Brett and I have talked about it. He sold cattle. We don't love any of it. And it is about shackle space. They have control. And right now that they've got to squeeze down to where they can do what they want with us. And we've got to swing that leverage pendulum. And this bill is one thing that starts to swing it in our direction. And I think we're headed the right way with this bill.
Absolutely. We're a little bit past the hour, but we have several more questions and good points I want to talk about. So we're going to stick around for a little bit longer. First off, I know you guys aren't reading the Facebook comments, but Travis Stovall, who is from our independent processing task force, actually brought up the shackle space issue. So in total agreement there, Travis, he said, we need to take the market back ourselves and run it. Of course, we've got our couple of policy committees, bickering about which is the solution. But like Justin said, we're working on so many different solutions and so many different issue areas. And one of that is the processing space. But Travis said we do need, more producer ownership over the processing chain, I guess. But Travis, great to have you, and great point there. Jacob from Nebraska is back with one more question. How would the Library of Contracts handle off-balance sheet financing?
Packer ownership. So, that's a tough issue. I think, when we saw what happened up in the Northwest and that the Packer doesn't own any, but all of a sudden they didn't have 200 and some thousand head, I believe was the number, I forget. And I hate to quote numbers because I can't remember, but they're not supposed to own them. And all of a sudden they come out and say they're short that many cattle. Well, then they come back. The backup to that was, well, they just financed them. Well, last time I knew, if you financed the cattle, you owned them. So there again is another huge thing that we can work on it in the short term. There are PNS rules that we believe are maybe not being followed to the T, and I think we can tee some of those up, and I think that's a great example where they've really told the tale on themselves right in front of us all, and we haven't done anything about it. That gets off topic a little with Senator Fisher's bill, but it is another one of those things that I agree that we have to address, and we can pick those up. We can be multi-layered in our way that we try to help this industry move forward, and we don't have to do it all now, be all end all now. We can be multi-layered in this, and I think Senator Fisher bill is a great layer.
I think that's a great question, Jacob, because Packer financing it is the telltale of exclusivity and as Justin said, captive supply. And if it's Packer financing, it's written down. No one throws out $1 million to a feedlot and just said, well, just pay us back when you bring the cattle in. There is something written down there, and perhaps as the Fisher bill moves forward through committee, that can be addressed. Leah, you know more about the process than I do, but I do think that's a very good point, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jacob, for tuning in and being one of our main question askers here tonight. We're out of questions here on Facebook and YouTube. We're of course live on both because we've got folks on both platforms, and we are over our time limit. So I guess we'll take some wrap up, some closing thoughts from you both here. What's our takeaway? What do we want folks to walk away from tonight?
Go ahead, Brett.
There are several takeaways. First of all, we need transparency and price discovery, and this is a bill that addresses that in probably the broadest and most complete manner I can think of. It addresses all of the concerns that were brought up in the NCBA meeting last summer. It addresses the concerns that the U.S. cattlemen have. So this is a good bill, but it's a bill that we can all work together to push forward and cooperate on and be together as an industry. It's not designed to increase cattle prices. It's not designed to necessarily influence the market. It's designed to give us transparency, and it's designed to give us information. And with information comes power. With power comes the ability to better negotiate an accurate market price for our animals.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what he said. I think it is a time in our history where we definitely have to unite, and I really appreciate the other cattle groups that we can work with. We've been on the phone with the Iowa cattlemen. We've been on the phone with many of these industry groups. We welcome all of those. I think that's one of the biggest things. And this isn't a U.S. cattleman thing. It isn't an NCBA thing. It isn't an RCAF thing. This is a cattle industry thing. And that's where we've got to wrap our heads around. We've got to put our boots on the ground, and we've got to get things done. And I can't be more proud of our group, because that's what we try to do. We try to stay out of the rhetoric. We try to put our boots on the ground and figure out solutions. And we've got some really great people behind the scenes that continue to do that on a daily basis. And again, I can't commend Senator Fisher's staff enough. I can't commend U.S. Cattlemen's staff enough for putting in the hours and the time it takes to get some of these things done. Brett Crosby has been doing an unbelievable job behind the scenes. The numbers, the figures, the stuff that Cowboys we can't get our head wrapped around, and he does a great job with that. And U.S. Cattlemen is here to facilitate any other groups that want to get involved, and we ask you to get involved with any of our committees. Again, we have some great committees working on lots of solutions. It's a multi-layered problem where you have multi-layered solutions from grassroots people, and I really appreciate that. So. Thank everybody for getting on. We appreciate you being a part of this call, and call your Congress people and tell them you want to get behind Senator Fisher's bill.
Man, it makes my job so much easier when I hear that they've been hearing from you all. So yes, call Congress, call Congress. Mr. Tupper, Mr. Crosby, thank you for spending your Friday evening with us. All of you who are tuned in, thank you for spending your Friday evening with us. If you're watching this through the weekend, we appreciate you. We're working on a very special guest on our next Facts Only Friday, so be on the lookout for that. And my homework for you tonight is read the bill. But with that, we will tune out, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.